maybe I jump into things too fast. Maybe not all of them last and they fizzle out, but not being so afraid or scared that it's not gonna work out, because the ride is fun. And I think if the ride is fun and you enjoy it, like, it doesn't matter the outcome.
Hi everyone, I'm here with my friend Lina. Lina is one of the most impressive people I've met in the last 10 years. Every time I see her or talk to her or just see her updates on social media, there's always something grand and the new initiative and the new aspect of her life that she's thriving in. And she's one of the people who's never afraid of failing or starting something, despite the fact that she doesn't know how it's going to turn out. So I absolutely acknowledge Lina for everything that she is. And right now she's working in a World Bank, and she's a social entrepreneur focusing her business on social good. And I can't wait to learn more about what she does and what kind of companies she runs right now, because there's always a few at the same time. So welcome, Lina.
Oh, Maria, thank you so much for hosting me and for agreeing to this call.
No, thank you for agreeing for this call. I can't wait to interview you and just learn about what you do. Maybe you can tell us about your current involvement in World Bank and some of your businesses that you're helping run.
Yes. So right now I'm a consultant in Fragility, Conflict, and Violence Unit at the World Bank, and specializing on forced displacement. So we're looking into how to bridge the humanitarian development divide on the topic specifically of refugees and internally displaced, because so far the world approach has been more of a humanitarian 6-month emergency issue, but when you look into it, refugee situations are usually protracted, and half of those are over 10 years. So that's a generation just that has passed without access to education or workforce. And so now what we're doing is seeing how to assist refugees in the long run, from the moment that they basically become displaced, and internally as well, which means that they are still inside their home country and their country of citizenship, but that not in the place where they are originally from, or where they have a house or had a job. So that's the World Bank side. And then this February, I launched a social enterprise where basically we employ refugee women to make date-based sweets and spreads. And so the idea on the one hand is to show that refugee employment can actually be integrated into business models, specifically startup business models, hopefully be an example for other industries, not just the food industry. And on the other hand, rediscovering the joy of healthy eating, showing that just because it's a sugar-free or gluten, dairy-free cookie doesn't mean it has to taste like cardboard and then it's terrible. And that's really why people fall off the wagon when trying to eat healthy, is because their options don't taste nice or they're not as convenient. Whereas we sweeten everything with dates, and that's how we're able to actually have really delicious products that at the same time are super good for you.
This is so cool. So how did you even come up with this idea, and who's helping you? Did you do this by yourself? I know that I remember your post on Facebook when everybody was out. It was February 14th, the Valentine's Day, and everybody was going out on a date. You were in the office the whole night, and I remember your post. If you can share with us what it was and what were you doing?
Yeah, so February 14th, 2018, I had nothing better to do than file incorporation for the affair. So I stayed home completing all the documentation. And yeah, my funny Facebook post was kind of, I said yes to the date, playing on those words and seeing
That's so cool.
We're in it for life, where basically I spent that whole night trying to get all the documentation in order, the bank account, and have the affair set up as a legal entity. And I don't remember exactly what I wrote in that post, but I do remember saying the play on words. I said yes to the date, and I I made a little picture and put like a dry date on a little plastic bicycle and like ride for life, something silly like that.
Yeah, for a long ride.
I love my dad jokes, so
No, that's great. So yeah, I'm really impressed with everything that you do, and so yeah, what my question is still around how did you come up with this idea, and who was there with you when you actually decided to go ahead with it?
So the idea came up because I had 5 kilos of dates that I had brought with me from a trip to Iran. And at that time, I was supposed to go on a 2-month diet with no processed foods, no gluten, dairy, everything. Because I had been traveling so much that I had massive stomach pain. So the gastroenterologist said,
Mhm.
eliminate all of this. And I have a massive sweet tooth, and I love coffee, and coffee was also off the table. So basically, I could not eat or drink anything that I loved. And I just, after some time of powering through, I fell off and I just started eating it again, and I fainted from the stomach pain. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to take this thing seriously. I need to listen to the doctor. No more playing around. And that's when I started looking up recipes. I said, well, dates are sweet. I really like them, but I'm tired of eating them just raw like that. For sure, there are ways to use them. And so I made this date brownie for myself that was gluten-free, no butter, nothing. It just had the date spread that is basically now the Faro date spread, cocoa powder, and protein pea powder, which is something I use a lot. And my friends and colleagues finished it. And I was like, you guys, that was, I'm the one here who can't eat normal food. And they're like, oh, we loved it, but like you put a lot of sugar and it's quite buttery. And I said, actually, no, it has none of those ingredients. It's just made with this date spread. And so then I don't really like cooking in the first place, and I'm definitely not patient to do things properly. And this was a 12-hour process to get this type of date spread. So I did some
Mhm.
market research, and I was like, I just want to buy it and get it over with. And every option that I found online, it was either really expensive or they added preservatives and sugar, which are things that I was not allowed to eat in the first place.
Right.
And then one night, a roommate jokingly said, you know, Lina, you're all about refugee employment. What if you got refugee women to make date spread? And I turned to him and was like, Austin, that's a great idea.
Oh my God. So he just came up for you with an idea.
Yeah, and I had been thinking about uh, different businesses, different scalable businesses for refugees, but I never thought
Mhm.
of like a consumer product because the food industry is not my background whatsoever, and it's never an industry that I thought I would actually go into. But and so that's how it started. It's just a couple of days later, made the website. Spent actually it was a day after, made the website. I had no name. I couldn't find a I wanted to call it Food for Good, but the domain was already taken. So a couple weeks passed by, and I bought some primitive equipment and some dates, 25 pounds of dates, and I had a woman who really was excited to work with me.
How did you find her?
So I have yeah.
How were you even pitching that, and what were you putting on the website? I'm just amazed right now. I don't even know how you start.
On the website, honestly, I just put exactly what we. That's the nice thing about it being a tangible product. It's really easy to explain. 3 ingredients: dates, water, citric acid, which is basically like just saying there's just dates in it.
Mm-hmm.
Made by refugee women, showing that it's all about sustainable employment
Mm-hmm.
product. And that's literally, it was the most simple website, the most like clear. I posted like, oh, we'll be posting a couple recipes coming up. And so that's how basically I launched the website. And I came into contact with a woman because I have a friend here who's a journalist from Syria, and he knows very well the community. So he asked around if anyone was interested in working and needed some extra work, and that's how I met the first employee. She actually lived very far. She lives in Baltimore, but a very dear friend of mine, Jojo, who's wonderfully supportive, drove her back and forth for an hour almost each way.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazing people. Who's helped me? Who hasn't helped me along the way? Like my poor roommates that we had to do like basically R&D testing in the kitchen to find out like 30 different types of spreads, and then using their friends during house parties as taste testers. um, being patient with the kitchen being a mess. There's date spread on our ceiling somehow. I have
I'm
no idea
sure
how
they
we
don't
got
mind.
there.
But I'm sure they don't mind all of the dates because they get to participate and eat all of that.
And see so they're really they're kept well fed, at least bribed with dates. Um, my mom and my brother were here this summer, and they really helped. So now we started to do festivals, so actually participating in festivals, farmers markets, to do direct sales, which basically helps people engage with the product because it's something new. The U.S. market is not used to date spread. Most people have no clue what it is. They ask me, how do I use it? What to do with it? But the important thing is that they taste it that first time.
Yeah.
And honestly, 8 out of 10 people who taste it really love it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was really interesting insight because I thought it would be more of a niche product, only people who are maybe familiar to international products or have been to the Middle East, and actually seeing that it appeals to basically the general public.
Right.
That for me was that some of like the greatest insight, and really showed that there's a way that we can push forward this healthy eating movement while integrating new flavors.
That's so cool. And I'm really admiring especially the fact that you're actually not just doing it by yourself, or like it's easy just to say, you can employ these women and then just sell it maybe, but this was actually the very fact, like this is a part of your company. It's who is making it, and you're doing it as a promoting this like social good. I absolutely admire that. That's so cool.
That's why it started. Honestly, like I wrote my thesis on here at Georgetown University on company interventions for refugee employment. That's very aligned with the work I was doing at the World Bank. Like all of my prior experience and work was using business as a tool for social good, but more on a theoretical level or like a large project base, never specific company. And so the whole idea of Dafero and everything started like, okay, it's like, it started initially as like a small project. Okay, let's just give a couple extra hours and some extra income to Safa, our first employee, so she can make it and keep it small and just see. And that's literally why the company started. And then actually seeing the customer side, where they started to really love the product, really show that there's a much bigger market. That's when that was kind of the switch from small, nice initiative to, okay, this has a potential to be a real company with much larger impact than 4 people now that we have alternating between shifts, but that this could diversify into big product line and just really make that transition. And so like the employment of refugees in this case, but as we're basically considering expanding at some point, refugees and vulnerable populations. Former trafficking victims, which are usually women and girls, those who come from abusive families. So really integrating and taking in workforce that has so much untapped potential, but is just left at the sidelines. That's the core of the business. That's why it started. So
yeah, and I remember from beginning when we met, and actually funny story of how we met is we were both going to an Electro Dash that was a 5K sort of marathon, and with neon lights and music, and we were both on the bus, and I saw her wearing really colored pants, and so I immediately knew that she's going to the same place. So we started talking, and then we didn't really know where we're going. So we just got off one of the bus stations and walked from there. We realized that we're actually not in the right spot, and we decided to walk toward that place together. And so as we're walking, we just connected on a number of things. And I remember just from that moment, you were telling me about some other initiative that you had as part of the UBC program. Is you created a company, and that was actually bridging the gap between the different cultures. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Breaking Barrier was a nonprofit initiative aimed at eliminating religious and racial racism against Islam in the Middle East, and it came out of a research trip that I had during my last year of undergrad at UBC, where I went to the UAE, Oman, and Pakistan. And I was researching the influence of Islam on women, institutions, culture, science. And when I was preparing for that trip, I received so much resistance towards going there. A lot of misconceptions, a lot of racism, and I thought, how is this possible in such an international setting as UBC, where something like 60% of the student body is foreign born? How is it possible? And imagine what's happening outside. And so I started to correlate that similar messaging that they were telling me with media influence bias. And so that's what Breaking Barriers, when I came back from the Middle East, was doing. We would put in touch every 2 weeks. I ran a webinar on different topics, such as the influence of Islam on women and science, and then we had art and banking. And each session had 3 very diverse people. For example, the banking session had one, Timur Quran. He's one of the most influential scholars in the US on Islamic banking, based out of Duke University. And his thesis is that it's just a normal form of banking, there's just renaming. And then there was the vice president of Mizan Bank, which is the biggest Islamic bank in Pakistan. And the third one was a consultant, a banking consultant in the UK, which was starting to notice that more and more clients wanted this type of service. And so what I was trying to do is basically bring in 3 very diverse people on the same topic, so they can give their opinion, and then the public can form their own opinion, instead of having, okay, Islamic banking means that we're financing terrorists, which,
Right.
if you look at Fox News, that's basically
Mm-hmm.
the hype when they say that a new bank opened some sort of branch. And the idea was that the public can be informed if they're offered diverse opinions. And so that's what we ran, and it was such a great experience. And I got to basically teach this model to other universities, pass it on to UBC. It's why I'm part of an international youth organization called ACWE, a common word among the youth, which is a wonderful organization where youth focus on interreligious and intercultural projects, and they run 2 projects every 6 months to run an impact in their communities. And so that's basically, I passed on that model to these groups and the universities, and so they can run their own Breaking Barrier sessions and basically break through the barriers that the media makes money off of building.
Yeah, so not only you started something as a student, and then you graduated, and then you still maybe were running it, but after that you just left this legacy. And now, not only in the UBC, which is your own university, stands for University of British Columbia, but now all of the other universities adopted the model. And now it might be actually a normal part of everybody's life as a student. Imagine what kind of impact that you've made just by coming up with this idea. Do you ever think about it? Do people tell you about how much influence you actually made?
Not usually to my face. I sometimes hear like other impacts and other stories of how people met or opened their minds on new topics, and then I hear it through others. One thing that I thought was very interesting when I was running Breaking Barriers, which it started in 2014, so an even lighter political climate than now. I had many friends, many friends from the Middle East tell me, "You're so brave." And I had never thought of that before in my life, and that was never something, like, never a concern that came up to me when I was at UBC. You know, Vancouver is such a safe environment, and you can walk at 4 a.m. and you're usually fine. You still have to be careful from the raccoons, but
It's the
it's
most
such
danger.
it's such a safe. So I was in this like mental space of this is such a safe environment, and then having friends mention repeatedly this, "You're so brave." I never thought of it as bravery because I never thought there was a threat.
Mm-hmm.
But that really opened my eyes that there are other parts of the world and other aspects, and maybe even now that things I think are much more heightened, that it's just so unfortunate that this should be considered some sort of bravery instead of a normal project like anything else.
Right.
And so that was something that really opened my eyes personally on that journey.
Yeah. I mean, just that story itself is so inspiring, and now you're continuing on that social good with the Pharaoh. So I think that you're really up to something great in life, and I just keep track of you because we don't really talk as often, but I keep track of what you do on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and every time there's something that amazes me in like all of your initiatives.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's really it's prominent, and I think when people tell you that it's brave, you actually stand for something that's bigger than yourself, bigger than maybe even like your little community. It's actually expanding without you even maybe knowing sometimes. But so for me, just realizing that is a huge deal. And so that's why I was asking if you even think about it. Wow, I started this just starting with one small idea, as I thought, and now it has this sort of ripple effect. Um,
I think when you're in it, there's no real time to sit back and reflect on that. It's like, oh my gosh, I forgot this time zone of this person. It's so much in the operations, and sometimes focusing so much on like what's not working to fix it,
yeah,
that the only moments when I realized that I was onto something was when I started to win awards. For the first time, I had never won any awards almost in like 3 years at UBC. It was one like community involvement, but you remember I was in like 50 clubs, and it's just who I've been since a kid, that I really like to do projects and everything, but nothing for something that I had started. and
right,
and so I was so focused on, oh my gosh, I forgot the speaker's time zone. Oh no, we only have two participants. All of the things that needed to be fixed. That last year when I did start to receive some awards, I thought, oh, like this is actually worth something, and then this is a nice thing. And that's that realization, that it's sad to say, but that type of like, it took that external validation to show that this is actually something worthwhile. And that was what gave me the push to then basically pass it on and teach it to others and have others run it and continue it. Because it's very likely that if I hadn't had that, I would not have thought, oh, who would want to learn this thing? It's just like my crazy passion project and idea, and like once I graduate, it's done. But having that, and now I think of things differently. I think it's always worthwhile to celebrate what you've done, even if it's a failure, because you've learned so much from it, and that becomes part of you. And like now I'm older, I understand that much better. And we're also lucky to live in like North America, where they have fail fest, and if you fail but then you succeeded, that's like the most amazing thing. I recognize that in other cultures, you fail once and they'll remember you forever, and you're stigmatized, and and oh, you suck at business because you went bankrupt that one time. Whereas here, oh, you went bankrupt, but then you started a company. Excellent. So a combination of many things that now has changed my mindset on basically that aspect, that it's always worthwhile. I mean, I knew I don't even like cooking, and I knew nothing about the food industry, and now I have a consumer packaged goods company. Like, I would have never thought that. But it's kind of that thing of being a little bit crazy and not understanding the risks, and I think that really represents like how we met. I had no friends who wanted to go to that run. They thought it was dumb to run under the Vancouver rain with lights. And I don't even run. I've never run in my life. But I thought, no, that's a great idea. And I wore a pink wig. I went like all out at something I had no idea about. Pink wig, bright orange pants. That's how you recognize me.
I think so.
This crazy person, that's the only place she can be going. And so I think that really represents how kind of maybe I jump into things too fast. Maybe not all of them last and they fizzle out, but not being so afraid or scared that it's not going to work out, because the ride is fun. And I think if the ride is fun and you enjoy it, like, it doesn't matter the outcome in the end.
Wow, this is exactly, I think, why I'm doing these podcasts. It's for these kind of conversations. A lot of people, they're afraid of failure, and it might have been because they've actually gone burned once by doing something that they really wanted, and then somebody shut them down. And by shutting them down, it could be just like their parents saying, no, don't do it, it's a stupid idea. Or maybe they even tried something and then it didn't work out the way they wanted it. And now you have to figure something out. And that's the biggest, I think, showstopper, is when people get in the loop of like this analyzing. Oh my God, I need to plan it. I need to know how this works. Like in your case, it would be, I need to understand how the cooking is done, and like what kind of equipment is needed, and how to create these labels and all of those things. But you just jumped right into it, and then you figured things out as you went. And I think this is the fun part that we don't think about when we're looking outside of that. You know, we're kind of looking at this big thing, and it's just so overwhelming. There's so many things to figure out. And what you just said is like the opposite of that. Is why you want to do this, is because it's all fun. You don't know how you're gonna do or what's gonna turn out, but you just jump right in. And this mentality, I don't know how to get there. You know, a lot of people struggle. I certainly struggle with that. I sometimes stop myself moving because it just looks overwhelming and scary, and I'm kind of paralyzed. And where do I even start? How do you get yourself moving? Like, do you figure out the first step, or is it more like, all right, I'm just gonna share with a bunch of people, see how they react and what comes out of it? What is your kind of action or maybe mental state that you put yourself in, whether consciously or not? Uh, any kind of practical advice would be really nice.
So one thing is, I think if you start to analyze everything, you get into analysis paralysis.
Totally.
If I had known how hard this is, and if I had known that it would take me 2 weeks, and I mean like 40 hours each, something like 80 hours to create a label, which to me looked like the silliest, easiest thing in the world. If I had known all of those things, I would never started it.
Mm-hmm.
But what pushes me to start things and just is, one, being a little bit crazy, because you have to be a little bit crazy to do anything in any form of entrepreneurship, honestly. And two, and really, so I love the product. I my idea was, okay, even if I end up with 50 unsold jars of this date spread, I can eat it. So no big deal. I love it anyways. If people don't like it, it's fine. And I also really, really believe in organic growth. though at the same time. So for me, I invested a certain amount in just like the basic equipment, the cheapest things I could find to have this like minimum viable product, the MVP. And then everything is bootstrapped to the max. So the focus group was not some outsourced company's focus group. It was my roommate's entire master's class who came over for an event for their part, and I said, okay, you guys sit down now and taste these 10 different jars and tell me which one you like the most. So really being very creative about that bootstrapping and being willing, and I think 3, being really humble, because I thought I was this like master of refugee employment and private sector, master because it's my master's thesis and it's my work and all of this, and then in real life you learn that you don't know like 1% of 1% of what you had to know, and being really humble and honestly like staying at the farmers market with like a tiny table because you don't have a stand because you didn't want to invest in pretty things before knowing it worked, under the rain, dragging 50 kilos of jars across like DC for festival. So really, really being, at least in this industry, I know tech is different, you don't have to drag around anything.
Yeah, except maybe tech debt.
which maybe is easier as opposed to like a physical product, but this idea of being really humble and being willing to start from scratch, and the organic growth part, because I said, okay, I'm going to invest this amount. If I can get 50 people to buy those 50 jars, then that means we're onto something. It means I will have remade the money I invested in, and I can invest some more. And that's how I've done it. That's why it's not if there are other ways to do it, secretly gather money, do pitches, get investors and everything, and then have the perfect equipment, the perfect label, the perfect anything. To me, that's too much of a risk. And also too, I work with vulnerable populations. If I give them the hype that they're going to have this amazing job at a real company, and then fast forward a couple months, not a single supermarket buys my product, then they're burnt because they gave their hope in me. They gave up their like issues around food stamps and unemployment benefits if you move into employment, and many different risk factors. That means that I burn their trust. I also burn part of their livelihoods, and at the same time, it's so risky for me because I will have invested all this money, or I will have debt, or have lost investors' money who won't trust me the second time. So my kind of actionable advice is choose an amount that if you lose it, you're gonna be okay. Whatever that, everybody's so different. For some it's 50, for some it's 50,000. But choose that amount and think creatively in a really small. If you saw our first label, it sucked. I printed it at home with my own printer. The jars by hand, everything was by hand. But people love the product. So if what you're building is something that people love, at some point you will have the brand and you will have all the pretty stuff that make it real and sell so much. But I personally always believe in like the organic growth part to overcome this like fear of failure or like overcome analysis paralysis, because in the beginning it's relatively easy and it's just super fun.
Very cool. I absolutely love what you just said. Yeah, I think it's gonna help a lot of people just to focus on small thing that you can do right now, maybe in your free time. It doesn't have to be quit your job to start a new enterprise, start something on weekends and evenings. Maybe share with a friend or two what is the smallest amount that you could possibly start with, and then see how it goes. If it gains traction, then maybe you're onto something, and if it doesn't, maybe you're not. But I think that a lot of people, we have this vision of, if you want to start your own thing, you have to dedicate 100% of all of your time on it. And then they get disappointed because if it doesn't work out, then it means they not only quit their job and got out of their stability, and now they're maybe even incurring some debt, or just burning through their savings account. And now, not only that, but their idea and all of the hopes and dreams got sort of crushed. Yeah, so I think what you just said is figure out your MVP, don't make the hype out of it, see how it grows organically. And if it gets there, if there's the right demand, if it's the right product and people like it, then it will just get into this big thing that you always wanted, but it will get there organically. And if it doesn't, then maybe it's just not something you should pursue at this time. But yeah.
Because sometimes you have a great like core idea or product, but people don't want it how you've given it to them, but they still want some version of that. And so being lean and flexible means that you can pivot and you haven't invested everything that you want, you have into it, but you're able to switch around. And also do not quit your job before you're profitable. That's just my personal opinion, coming from like very risk averse region and a family of scientists and everything who are not into entrepreneurship and private sector and all these risk stuff. But in general, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you are not mentally calm and know that your rent, your food, your maybe family's necessities are covered, you're not going to be the best business person or an entrepreneur you can be. And I think the ones who really shine and really succeed are the ones who are in that mental space to do that. And so I really think that like you should not quit your job or burn more savings than you can afford to lose. Really, that like long-term loss, because mentally it's exhausting to have a company that's maybe not profitable and then a life that you also are bootstrapping. It's really hard. And the ones who succeed, I mean, I know they're really wonderful stories. I know Elon Musk stepped on the floor in his office space and everything, but honestly, how many Elon Musks exist?
Right.
Very, very few. And those are the people who are willing to give up everything. And I think you have to, everyone's different, but like also do an analysis, like, are you willing to give up everything, your health, a family, a life, for it?
Right. And burn yourself out so that, yeah, that you're not even enjoying it anymore. It's just
Yeah,
all about the results.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because a lot of people say that, well, if you're not invested 100%, how can someone else, really believe in your idea? And what you just said is like being risk averse is it doesn't equal you cannot be entrepreneur. And for a long time I kind of used that as an excuse that I'm always on a visa of some sorts in different countries, that I'm not from here, I don't have this family support. In fact, I need to support my family, and I cannot really rely on someone else, because if I fail or if I fall, I'm not sure if I can really rely on someone else to really pick me up. So that being risk averse kind of stops me from like doing a lot of things, because I say, wow, if I fail here, then it's not just me going down, it's maybe other people going down with me. And that kind of just thought automatically puts a stop really on any initiative. And what you just said, that you could be risk averse, you could think about what is the minimum thing you're okay with losing, but do not go beyond that, because you're going to burn yourself out, because you're going to be stressed, and you're not even going to enjoy it. So I think that thought is kind of counterintuitive, maybe to what media is portraying as entrepreneurship right now. And I really like that we maybe just hear about those crazy stories, but majority of people are actually not doing crazy things like Elon Musk, and they've started organically without compromising all of the other aspects of their lives.
most successful entrepreneurs are actually 30 to 40 years old. They've been in an industry for some time, they've become an expert in that industry, they have set their savings aside, so they're financially semi-secure at least. And they have innovated within their industry or seen something interesting into another one. So most entrepreneurs are not like 17 years old and in a garage. That's in terms of like statistics and numbers of the entrepreneurs who do succeed. And of course, it's not the sexiest story in the world, but that's the truth. And I really believe in calculated risks. I mean, in entrepreneurship, there's no way to be risk averse. You have to, the first thing I said was like, you have to be a little bit crazy to go into this, to give up. I posted once like an entrepreneur will give up a 40-hour work week for an 80-hour work week with half the pay. So you have to be a little bit crazy and wild to do that, but at the same time, there's a way to do that without running yourself to the ground and burning out and necessarily being a little bit airy-fairy.
Right.
In the end, I'm Albanian, and that culture does stay strong and about being concrete, being on the floor. Like, so yes, follow your dreams, but take your head with you. That's advice that one of my dearest friends gave me at UBC when I was doing Breaking Barriers.
Wow, that's a really great way to actually conclude that as well. I think you're a perfect combination of like risky and at the same time wanting to be actually safe and like keep your sort of vital needs above any other risks and projects. So I think the combination of, yes, you can definitely pursue your dreams and do something great and believe in yourself, but don't push yourself so hard that you're not even sure why you're doing this anymore, or yeah, you can't even take care of yourself. So I love all of this. Thank you so much for saying that and for sharing all of your stories. I hope to catch up with you soon, and I can't wait to hear all about your successes and all of your ups, because if that's all I see. I never see downs. I'm sure you have them, but you are an incredible person that is so resilient that even when you are down, it doesn't even maybe seem to you as that. It's just another result. It's just whatever. So I really acknowledge you, and I appreciate all of your time and all of your sharing and being vulnerable. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me share. Hopefully it's useful to anyone. And if not, it was so nice to catch up with you after so long.
It definitely was.